is and was more than a prophet. Now, this is why I'm going into this particular lesson today, because you have so many new claims out there concerning this man, Christ, right? And you have other religions that would attempt to downplay his importance, not just to the children of Israel, but to the world. And as much that we're living a day where Satanists and atheists and non-believers will outright lie and claim, listen, that Christ never existed. Now, when someone makes statements like that, guess what, brothers and sisters? They're not even in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Any historian will listen to this person speak and say, well, okay, he can't even be in the room concerning the discussion of Christ and how Christ politically and religiously impacted the world, including all other religions that are at odds with Christ's doctrine. He didn't just impact his people. Christ impacted the world and every other religion that's at odds with him. See? And this is all what? Historically documented. Even if you don't believe in Christ, even if you don't follow his doctrine, you know he existed. Mm-hmm. If you have any insight to true history or any understanding of true history. So when you have people conversating, debating, or even questioning whether Christ existed, if they bring up that, they're not even worth listening. They're not even worth actually listening to for a moment, because history all over outside of America did what? Chronicled Christ's interactions historically with their people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, Elder Lawyer, before I go, anything you have to say on that before I go?
Yes, sir. Just one quote. This is just one book of many, and what you're saying is 100% exact, because the general consensus among scholarship, whether you are an atheist, a non-believer, believer, agnostic, theist, or what have you, whatever belief system you have personally, the general consensus among scholarship is that Christ was an historical figure that actually walked the face of the earth. Now, the differences come in when now the discussion of did he do miracles, did he resurrect? Those are the things that are debated. But as far as his actual existence, that cannot be denied. Here's just a quick reference called the historical Jesus. Let me get the author.
The Historical Jesus. Here's a reference. Come on.
Yep. Ancient Evidence for the Life of Christ by Gary. Let me get his name here. It's kind of hard to see his name. All right. By Gary R Habermas. Okay. I'm going to read this real quick. This is from the title, Salakia, of the chapter is, Did Jesus Ever Live?
Did he ever live? And it's ridiculous that question is actually out there, but go on, Elder Lawyer.
Yes, sir. Very few scholars hold the view that Jesus never lived. I'm going to read that again. Very few scholars hold the view that Jesus never lived. This conclusion is generally regarded as a blatant misuse of the available historical data. Even Rudolf Bultmann, in his program of demythologizing, I can get a little tongue-tied here, mouth a little dry. Demythologizing the New Testament, said, by no means are we at the mercy of those who doubt or deny that Jesus ever lived. So he's citing even those who do not necessarily believe in Christ. Even they must admit that Christ is an historical figure. So to say otherwise, like the elder just mentioned, you pretty much be laughed out the room.
So I'm glad you're bringing that up, because this is really to get to the crux of it when it comes to, hold on. Where is, yeah. When it comes to Christ's discussion, it seems as if when it comes to, let's put it this way, according to the Gentiles, religious figures that should be revered or respected, right? It seems as if there's no pushback from any Gentile against Buddha. There's minimal pushback when it comes to Buddha and Buddhists within, religion. There's no pushback where Christians and others are going against Buddhists and Buddha. Buddha is revered, what? As a respectful religious figure throughout the earth with no pushback. Muhammad, whom the Arabs look to honor as their prophet, who gave them some level of credibility really in the earth. Okay? It was through prophet, that the so-called prophet Muhammad, that the Arabs will gain some level of respectability religiously in the earth. So you see very little pushback against Muhammad, the prophet, the so-called prophet. Mm-hmm. But why is it, brothers and sisters, that there's so many questions and vitriol and arguments when Christ is brought up? Mm-hmm. Right? Why? You ever wonder that? Have you ever wondered why this key figure is rejected? Is rejected, brothers, sisters, when in comparison to other prophets or teachers throughout the Gentile world religiously? When you compare Christ to them, why is Christ the most rejected? Huh? Why? Well, we're going to go into it. But before I go into that, our lesson, our king, he's our king. Okay? And he will he will establish a government right here on earth. Our King Christ was and is more than a prophet. Now, just for some historical credence on what we were saying concerning Christ's history, right? If I'm going to prove or disprove Christ historically, I must go back into history, the time Christ walked the earth. That's what I must do. Of course, atheists, Satanists, and others would have you say, well, Christ never existed. Why? Because if you don't believe in Christ, you're condemned. And what better way to cut you off than to have you believe he never existed? See, if he existed, then now every individual, Jew and Gentile alike, has a choice to make. Outright. I can understand a Satanist who's destined to burn in hell to be outright saying, well, Christ never existed. Because now he absolves himself from what? From believing in him. He don't have to believe in him because he's convinced himself with that thwarted mentality that Christ never existed. It takes accountability off the table for that individual when it comes to believing and understanding what? The power that comes with believing. So if I'm going to go into crisis or try to validate or discredit Christ historically, I must at least go into the history to be credible, right? Now, you'd be better off saying, like most people do anyway, yes, he existed, but I really just don't believe in him. Mm-hmm. You're more credible and have a greater chance with him just by being outright letting your nay be nay and your yea be yea and just have a stance. The majority of people who claim he never existed is because what? Is because their life is contrary to the standards and the morality Christ stood for. We are to compare ourselves to him, with he, Christ, being the Son of God, as a path that leads us to a kingdom that will soon come here.
That's right.
See? That gives us a path, a model to model ourselves after. Why wouldn't you or an individual want to aspire to be a man such as he? Why? Unless you're evil, immoral, wicked, right? Unrepentant. So let's go back to Christ's time, may we? There was a historian by the name of Tacitus. For you unbelievers, look it up. Tacitus was an historian during the time between Christ and the fall of Jerusalem that's really began around 64 AD. Tacitus. Who was Tacitus? The Roman historian and senator Tacitus referred to Christ. Now, Christ didn't exist, but this man who's written in history, look him up, referred to him. A senator. Mm-hmm. Okay? This is for those out there who's having these mundane, not going anywhere debates concerning whether or not Christ existed. His execution, Tacitus referred to Christ, his execution by Pontius Pilate, and the existence of early Christians in Rome in his final works. Annals, written ca. AD 116. Book 15, chapter 44. So I've mentioned many days, Elder Lawyer, in the academy and out, that Christ is written all through the annals of Rome. Understand this, folks. The height of Rome was actually established to do what? To seek out that child who would free and who at the very end would unite his people against the Roman Empire. That was one of their religious agendas, and along with the Roman priesthood. is to prophetically be in position to get rid of this child who was prophesied in their omens to establish our people again as the people of God. All through the annals of Rome, Christ is written, not just the Bible. Now, the context of this passage is the 6-day great fire of Rome that burned much of the city in 64 during the reign of the Roman Emperor Nero. The passage is one of the earliest non-Christian references to the origins of Christianity. The execution of Christ described in the canonical Gospels, and the presence and the persecutions of Christians in first century Rome. So really technically, the fall of our people in Jerusalem started around 64 AD when Nero, an Edomite, a Roman emperor, burned cities in Rome only to blame it on our people, the Jews, the Israelites, the blacks who were in Israel. He created a false flag so that now he would have a pretext to do what?